Hello, my dear Cancers. This is your reading for August 4th, the week of August 4th, or whenever you hear this and it resonates. So, the thought that came to me as I was working with the cards was to do you, first of all, next. And it was to remind you about something as you're moving into this new way of experiencing emotion. And what suddenly struck me was that so very often, Cancers, you have been disinclined to let yourself really feel hurt. You've been sometimes so deliberate in trying to take care of other people's feelings that you haven't wanted to tell them when you were upset by something. Part of it is because you didn't want to upset them, but part of it was also because for those of you that I'm reading for, and of course it won't be for everybody, but that some of you didn't trust your own right to be hurt. It was, well, am I being too sensitive? Because Cancers get told that all the time, right? Am I being too sensitive? Am I overreacting? And so there's been a tendency sometimes to not actually say what you felt, and sometimes not even let yourself go to what you felt when there was a slight or a hurt. And while that can seem reasonable, because of course we want to rise above it, we want to, whether or not it's in spiritual terms or whether or not it's in terms of just being a good, kind person, there is a quality of withholding truth in that. Truth from ourselves, first of all, of really letting ourselves know what we're feeling. And if we don't know what we're feeling, how do we set boundaries? And this is the thing, Cancer, is this is part of you being able to accept that you have the right to set boundaries, but not just the right, you have the obligation. Because if you don't allow yourselves to set boundaries with people that are actual verbal boundaries that are clear, then you get into a place where everything can become kind of muddied and confused. Because yes, you're feeling hurt, but at the same time, you're not wanting to hurt them, and you're doubting if you should be hurt. And so you go through this whole kind of schmozzle of emotion in yourself. Whereas if you would allow yourself to start with, okay, what am I really feeling here? And sometimes you have to ask that question a few times to get to it. And actually, like Cancer, this is something that I really want, before we say any more about this, this is part of what your gift is to be able to have an experience and be able to move into the emotion so that you can expand it and understand the different elements of it. And very often for Cancers, it's on many levels. So it can be on the emotional level, it can be on the psychological, it can be in many different, and spiritual, energetic, how it plays out emotionally, psychologically, all the different ways that you can look at it. And that's a gift to be able to do that. The trick is to be able to do it in a way where you are grounded in your confidence of being able to do it and to understand that that's part of the mechanism of how you experience emotion. This is not something that you are encouraged to criticize yourself for. In fact, you're being encouraged to really understand it and own it as an ability that not everybody does. And I heard one tarot reader a while back talk about Cancer's gift being able to work through cycles, and because of the moon being the planet that rules Cancer. And I believe that that's very true. Sometimes what it means, however, is that you have to go deep in order to be able to deal with it. And sometimes that means taking space from the situation and the people around you. It's also part of being very empathic. So Cancer, what the guidance is right now, we are experiencing a Mercury retrograde now, which means that there is a tendency for there to be a lot of emotions and things moving quickly. you're being encouraged to pay attention to what's coming up. Pay attention to the nature of how you process emotion and really respect that, really honor that. And remember that when you get into a feeling of being hurt, to not push it away and pretend that it isn't there, but also not to get stuck in the feeling bad about it mode, either feeling bad about it because of the other person or feeling bad about it for yourself. It's an energy, and it is sometimes difficult to face an emotion that we have considered to be, and this is for any sign, right? It's difficult to face an emotion that we are judging as somehow wrong, like we shouldn't be having it. Because then it's not just facing what somebody else has done, but it's also causing us to look at what we don't like in ourselves, or what we don't like and acknowledge that we have it in ourselves. So it can be kind of like a double whammy. The advantage to that is that as you are able to really breathe around it and let yourself be with whatever the emotion is and soften around it, we know energy is an emotion, or I should say emotion is an energy, and energy wants to move. It has its own momentum. So when you don't contract around it by judging it, or by judging it good or bad, or inflating it by making it, of course I have a right to be hurt, it gets to move and change and show something else. And what it can show you is what you're sensitive about. And maybe it goes back to something that you can look at. And maybe it's just a sensitivity that makes you say, this kind of behavior isn't good for me. And is it appropriate for me to not be around it? Or to let somebody know that this kind of behavior is disturbing? Doesn't mean you're telling them that they have to be different. That's the other thing. Cancer does not want to tell people what to do. Cancer feels things deeply. And so Cancer can sometimes think, how can they not know that? How can they possibly not know that that's going to hurt? Well, they don't. They don't always, my dears. They don't. So this is kind of a reminder. And if I can just encapsulate this, because I feel like it's a lot. If I can encapsulate this for you, Cancer, what I would say is this. Understand that you go deep. Don't get stuck in something because you're afraid of feeling it, or you're afraid that feeling it makes you a bad person or makes the other person a bad person. Don't feel that setting a boundary is you telling them who they need to be. This is you telling them what is okay with you and what is not, and they have a choice. And honor and respect your ability to feel emotions deeply on many levels. The other thing that can happen, Cancer, is, and this is particularly relevant because you're stepping out into the world and looking at new relationships, or how to have new relationships, how to let emotions in your life in a new way. So sometimes what can happen is when these old patterns come back of wondering, am I being too sensitive? Should I say something? Should I not say something? What's my right? All of that stuff. It can lead you to feel like, oh no, I'm not ready because this just didn't roll off my back like water off a duck's back. But no, this is just you realizing that you're processing it, and look at what you've done differently this time than what you would have done last time. You don't have to rationalize why somebody was the way they were and use it as an excuse not to say something. You can acknowledge it and understand it and use that as a way to be kind and compassionate in communicating your needs. And that's how you evolve into being able to be confident that you're going to be able to exist in relationships that have a little bit more depth. Okay, Cancers? I think this is great. Now, the cards that you get here, specifically the 3 cards that you got, I got most of this as a channeling, but the cards that you got was can't and won't. And I think this is relevant for this. Can't is the language of a child. It suggests inability and powerlessness. And I think that's sometimes where we can all get when we have a confusion of emotion. Is that sense of, I don't know what to do with this. Won't is the language of an adult. It suggests choice and therefore power. It's the ability to choose, which gives us the power to deliberately create our lives. And this is where you're at, Taurus. You don't need to be stuck in old patterns. You don't need to keep your mouth shut because you were told to when you were a kid. You don't need to fear your emotions because other people feared your emotions. Can't, no, won't. I won't accept that behavior, or I won't allow myself to fall into despair around this. I won't allow myself to judge me in a harsh way. I will take accountability. I can take accountability and also encourage other people to take theirs or let them know what my boundary is. You're also being told, my dear Cancers, because you go so deep in your emotion, it can be a very, very, I won't say dark place and I won't say a heavy place, but it can be a place of intensity. And you're being told, play. Allow yourself to play. And also, you're allowed to say the wrong thing. And I'm using the word wrong because that's often what you fear. You're allowed to express your feelings and have somebody call you on it and have it be a clarification of something that makes you look a little silly or sensitive, because you are also allowed to be sensitive. And you're allowed to be oversensitive. You're allowed to be all of those things. So allow yourself to, if you can, allow yourself the exploration of emotion and relationship to be something that's a little bit more playful and a little bit more lighthearted. Doesn't mean you won't go into that quiet, dark discovery and communion place within yourself. But it means that you can see that within the context of relationships being playful. And now that goes along with taking a break, like taking a break from fixing yourself, from feeling like you have to apologize for anything about you. You're allowed to do things in a way that is not always absolutely 100% perfect, kind, attentive. You're allowed sometimes to just say it the way you feel it and deal with what the outcome is. Okay? Cancers, I consider this to be really good because now I feel like this is giving you practical advice on how to work with a cyclical pattern of how you deal with emotion and how to work with it and honor it in a really productive way towards your spiritual growth. Okay, that's it, Cancers. Take care.